So usually I start lifters with this very basic exercise. It's a dip drive. So we go ahead and assume a snatch grip. We're gonna have the bar at the hip here. So for me, it's right outside of these rings. From this position, I'm gonna pull back while keeping my knuckles down. So you'll see my wrists are flexing back and I'm retracting my shoulders or my scapula there. So here I keep my shoulders down and I'm just gonna do a quick dip and drive. Dip and drive. So you'll see my feet stay flat and I finish vertical. I'm not overextending back. It's all through the knees and ankles, right there, just like that. So that's a dip drive drill. So this teaches new lifters how to use their legs to finish the drive. So that takes us to the next one. The next one is a dip drive with ankle extension. So with the dip drive, ankle extension, other things apply. So we're still gonna have the knuckles down, pulling the shoulders back. Same dip, but after this, I'm gonna go into ankle extension. Here I keep the bar at the hip, I'm still pulling back and I'm still retracting. I'll go through that again. So pulling back, shoulders retracted, dip drive, ankle extension. So one thing I want to note with the ankle extension is that it's one extension. You'll see my ankle's not bouncing at the top. That's a common thing that I see with new lifters, that when they extend, they bounce a lot on the heels like that, or on the toes. So when you do it, one extension, one push. And it's gonna be this whole front chunk of the foot there. You're gonna see this whole part push, not this, what I usually see, tippy toes. All right, so you wanna make sure the drive is that whole front of the foot, just like that. And that'll take us to the next lift. So the next one is gonna be the same exact thing, the first two put together, now with a high pull. So I'm gonna get a good position, knuckles down, pulling back, dip drive, ankle extension, then high pull. You see there, my knuckles stayed pointed down the whole time. I'll do it again, a little quicker now. One more time. So a good way to think about this is, could I use you for a second? Yeah. You stand right here. So a good way to do this, I'm gonna grab your hand and then I'm just gonna have you start at the starting position of a snatch. So go down to the bottom position. So I'm gonna pull up on her hand, I'm gonna talk her through the whole thing. Go ahead and get to the power position. Good. And now go into extension. Keep pushing. You see here, I'm gonna tell her to go into a high pull and I'm gonna pull on her hand. Go ahead and go into a high pull. And you see here, she's pushing through that, you can go ahead and go down. She's pushing through that whole front of the foot and pulling up on my hand. That's why it's really important to keep the knuckles down through that whole part of the pull. Let's do that one more time. Go ahead. Go through the pull. So now I'm applying pressure and she's pushing really hard there. Thank you. That's the last part of the lift that a lot of people miss. So they miss that last part where the toe is still pushing and the knuckles are still pulling up on the bar, or your upper body's still pulling up on the bar. And that's why I say it's really important to get rid of that bounce at the top there, okay? We're gonna go into the hip snatch now. So the hip snatch is the next progression that I use with people. So we went through the dip drive with ankle extension, the dip drive high pull. So now we go into the actual hip snatch. So from here, I'm gonna go same exact dip drive, but I'm actually gonna take the lift, okay? Do that again. So here, all the same principles. I'm gonna go really slow through this. I'm gonna go through the dip drive, high pull, and under. Same thing. And that takes me to the next exercise. So the next one that I like to use is a tall snatch. The tall snatch overemphasizes those positions even more, but usually I start with the hip snatch because you could use more speed. The tall snatch is a little tougher. So with the tall snatch, I like to add an ankle extension. So we're gonna go from a power position or just a standing position, completely straight. I'm gonna go into the high pull and drop completely under. I'll do that again. Elbows high, my knuckles are pointed down. The main thing here is that I spin under the bar and my wrists stay in the same spot. One more, full speed. Okay, now we're gonna go from blocks. So the reason I like to use blocks is people have a hard time going from a hang. So we already went from the hip, we did a hip snatch and we did a tall snatch, both from the hip. So the next one, or the next progression would be from the blocks. Like I said, because going from the hang adds a component where you have to go down and back up. So we're simplifying it, just coming up, making it a lot easier for the lifter to understand the lift. So from here, we're starting in this position. Because the bar is at the knees, we want to ensure that the knees are back. All right, so if we look at the lift from the floor, at this position, our knees are back, okay? So that's why when we go from the blocks, we want to ensure we're in that same position. So we're going to set up, make sure the knees are back. As you can see here, my back is an extension. My chest is in front of my shoulders, and my knuckles are still pointed down. So I'm going to go through it slow, getting to the hip. So from here, we're going to pull back and stay over the bar. I'll do that one more time. Another thing that's really important to consider when lifting off blocks is the drive through the legs. So I'm going to push my feet hard through the floor, get the bar to the hip, then take the lift. Drive my legs, pull back. One more. All right, so now we went from the blocks. Like I said, the blocks is a little easier because you don't have the eccentric component or the loading component when you're going down and then having to come back up. So now we're gonna go ahead and add that because we've already gone through the block snatch. So here, I'm just gonna go through the first part where I go down to the knee. I'm gonna push my hips back and move my knees back. So here you can see we're in that same position that we were on the blocks again. My knees are back, I'm holding this position, my knuckles are still pointed down. So I'll do that facing this way. Again, my hips are gonna push back, I'm gonna keep a big chest, I'm gonna be in this position right here. Then to get back to the hip, I'm gonna be right here, and it's very important to keep a bend in the knees when you get to the power position, because the knee extension is what gets you that bar height. All right, so now we'll go back to the bar and we'll do it real time. One more. Re-chalk. All right, now that we went over the hang snatch from the knee, we're gonna go to the low hang. So this makes it a little harder. I like to use this one because it increases the need to drive through your legs more. I'll show you what I mean. So through this, we're going through all the same positions, knees back, knuckles down, pulling back. As soon as I pass my knees, I'm gonna bend into the knees a little bit, very close to that start position, pull the knees back, and then get back to that power position. I'll do it again facing this way. So for the low hang, the whole time that I'm going down, I want to make sure that I'm pushing hard through that front part of my foot like we went through with the high pulls, all right? That whole chunk of the foot stays on the floor, pushing really hard. So we're going to go ahead and go through it. Knees move back, knuckles stay down, chest stays in front of the shoulders. After I pass the knees, I start to bend into them, just like that, postured up, knees back, back to the hip, and then I take the lift. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that now on the bar. One more. I was a little back on that one. Okay, and that takes us to the classic snatch, going from the floor now. Moving on to the classic snatch, that puts us on the floor now. So now we gotta go over start position. So going over start position, we already got our snatch grip for all the other work we were doing. Now we gotta find out how wide we want our feet. I personally like my feet a little wider than shoulder width apart. We're gonna keep our knees over the bar, chest over the bar, and then one thing that I see very commonly is the shoulders forward like this. We wanna make sure that our shoulders are back, just like we were talking about in all the other positions, all right? So we wanna make sure the knuckles are down, wrists are slightly flexed, shoulders are behind the chest, back is tight, and then we go ahead and tighten up before we take the lift, all right? So again, reviewing that off the bar. When you start up in your start position, again, find your start position where your feet are comfortable. Like I said, mine is a little wider than shoulder width apart. We make sure that the wrists are flexed back and the shoulders are pulling back on the bar, just slightly, so that your arms are straight. After that, we go ahead and get rid of that last slack, drive the legs through the floor, and take the lift, all right? So now we'll be doing that on the bar. I'm using hook grip here. So that's when I put my thumb under my other fingers. Get in my start position. I like to use a dynamic start. So I move my legs, tighten up, take my lift. I'm gonna rest a second. I don't like to take lifts back to back so much, because then I usually get out of position. All the same things. I start with my feet, make sure that the plates are tight on the bar, get my grip. I use the same setup every single time. Dynamic start. And that's how you execute the classic snatch.